A very good day all. I want to continue the lesson we had last week where we discussed the basics of, well, what are fairy tales, what folk tales, what are legends, myths, and how are these influenced by culture, context, and identity. Um, I was told by your mentor that it wasn't very clear to all of you that why we are doing this. And even though I think I mentioned that during the first lesson, I will repeat this, of course, because this is important. If you do not understand why we're doing something or why I'm making you do something, please just ask me. I'll happily respond. So what we're doing right now is diving into the basics of the IB. So we're going to look at how can we analyze texts, how can we analyze certain forms of literature, what is necessary to understand, what are we doing and why are we doing this. And as I tried to explain to you that there are three different lenses. So you've got readers, writers, and texts. You've got time and space, and you've got intertextuality. So readers, writers, and text is really who wrote something, what did they write, and how was it received by me. For instance, most of the time, the reader we look at as reader, i.e. you. Time and space is really especially looking at, okay, but how are these stories formed? How are these texts formed and influenced by the time and space in which they were written? Where were they written? When were they written? And why is that important to know? And the intertextuality part is really the idea of how do texts influence other texts? How is it a case that if I have a text from the 16th century or from the first century or from 6,000 years ago, it is still here? But more importantly, how does that influence the texts I'm reading, I'm writing? And that's why we're doing this, because it's an introduction to the IB. And besides that, this particular assignment is something that we've done in 5AO in a slightly more difficult version. And what we noticed is that this is a really nice introduction to the things we're going to read over the course of the next 2 years. So the reasons we're doing this is one, well, you're going to do the IB next year, I hope at least. What does that mean? Two, what can I expect of this? And how can I be prepared for what I'm getting? And three, it's also for us now really giving you 2 assignments over the course of the next 3 weeks that give us something to judge, something to assess, but also something to grade you on. And yes, oh no, oh, grading, panic, this, that. But really, you get all the space and time you need, and you can ask me questions every single day on what's going on, how am I doing this, what is happening here. So try to take, control of that and try to make use of that, and try to make use of me in that sense as well. So basic introduction there. Culture, context, and identity. Pretty much every single IB aspect there. And we're going to look at these Cinderella stories from around the world. Most of you handed in the Cinderella questions or the answer to those questions of week 1. And I'm really happy that you did. And I enjoyed the answers as well. And as I kind of expected, most of you are very well versed in about the Cinderella films more often than the original stories, but like the basic elements you have. What I'm going to do now is to start an assignment in which you're going to read Cinderella stories from different contexts, from different cultures. And you are going to analyze what does that do to the story that I know, the story that I have grown up on, the story that I know by heart, or at least I'm familiar with. So, hoping that this works. There we go. These are the basic elements of folk tales. Most of these we already looked at throughout the year, but the most basic theme, of course, is still good versus evil. You have an evil stepmother, stepfather, sister, evil someone, and you have a good main character. The characterization, which means how our characters shown, how do we understand these characters, tend to be very flat. We call them. We've got flat characters and rounded characters. Most of the time in folktales, they're simple. The heroine or the hero is usually young, she's fair, she's kind, that's it. We do not get a lot of information on background, hobbies, particular likes and dislikes, youth traumas, stuff like that. Sometimes you get something along the lines of, oh yeah, and her mother died, but that's it really. And the other characters, we have the same problem. If you look at setting, the place tends to be very loose. It's either very contextually bound. So if you're in China, if you're going to read the Chinese Cinderella story, it's a very clear area of China. But most of the time, the introduction to a folktale is once upon a time, comma, in a place far away. So both time and place are uh, hard to catch. We do not know exactly. The only thing we know is that there's loads of distance. I'm going to tell you a story that has nothing to do with this particular place and time that we're in right now, but once upon a time, and there's a certain mystery there. The plot line of these folktales tend to be full of action. You don't have loads of thinking, talking, discussing. No, it's action. Every single event closely follows the other one. So this happened, that happened, she said this, then that happened, explosions, fairy tale mice, huge ball, dancing, slipper going, oh no, and now. So not a lot of breathing space. And that's also because these folk tales were orally transmitted. They were told to children mostly. And children don't have a huge attention span. So within the course of 4 or 5 minutes, you should be able to tackle the story. There are conflicts in every plot line, and here they are often resolved through great deeds, so a huge thing is done, or there's acts of kindness. So, for instance, the conflict between Cinderella and her evil stepsisters and stepmother is resolved through either a great deed, which means that she forgives them, or she sends them away, or an act of kindness where she hugs them and says, oh, we're all okay now, right? And everyone's okay again. If you look at style and tone, we tend to have loads of repetition. So Cinderella needs to clean something, and you get that a lot. And the tone, because the language tends to be very simple, again, aimed at kids, it's to the point. The tone tends to be, oh, poor girl, but don't you worry, something good will happen. The motifs that we tend to see, and a motif is a recurring concept, so something that comes back again and again and again. In this case, we tend to have talking animals helping the main characters. You tend to have some magic somewhere, magic fairy dust, the fairy godmother, and you tend to have loads of helpers. So the main character, even though she's hurt, she's in pain, she's never really alone. There's always someone somewhere to help her. Now, as I said, there are many, many versions. I'm just going to show you a couple of them. You'll get an assignment in which you'll see more of them. But in this case, for instance, you've got Smoky Mountain Roads, which is an Appalachian Cinderella. This really is based on class differences. Appalachia is a mountain range in America where you have loads of farmers, and every now and then you have a rich, wealthy farmer. So this is mostly based on that. Again, anchored for a princess from India, you can imagine perhaps that the Indian storylines, the Indian magical happenings are different from the American ones. Cinder Edna is a gorgeous one. It's from 1994. A California mom who was bothered by the original Cinderella story, and she created a story with the next door neighbor, Cinder Edna, who also lost her shoe, but she's fine without a man, and she's just happy anyways. Rough face girl. So in Algonquin, you have an Ojibwa. So these are different Indian or Native American fairy tales. And it is really down to the basic concepts of gods in the tribes through which we have differences within these two stories. So is it a face in the sky? Is it a face in the water? Is it a god of fire or a god of wind? Anything can happen here. And an African folktale from Zimbabwe with Mufara's beautiful daughters. It's a fairly well-known one. And this is really, again, you have the African plains, you have Zimbabwe, you've got elephants, you've got your giraffes. Logically, I would argue, not a lot of talking mice here per se. You would expect different animals. Cendrillon is a Afro-Caribbean version. This is one I was told by someone when I was in Trinidad. I went to Trinidad and Tobago for my studies. And it's a story about really a slave girl who is invited to a white man's home, and they fall in love. And this particular difference where you have a slave girl of color who is then falling in love with, and he's falling in love with her, a white man who owns plantations there. That's politically very, very intense, of course. You can imagine, perhaps. The Igbo version is Chinye. Not really unlike Mufara's daughter, but still there's loads of differences. The Igbo one, logically, is linked to, I would argue at least, to Okonkwo, to Things Fall Apart. And Cinderella is a contemporary urban version where you have a girl who's trying to get by in a bustling city, and things happen to her. So again, every single time you have a different context in which it is produced, which has influence, and in that context you have a different culture, and that has an influence on the story that is told. Okay. Oh, damn. I thought I'd change it all. You are going to analyze Cinderella stories from around the world. Now, what we first wanted to do was have you form groups and do this, but that's now impossible due to Corona. What you're going to do, and I have assigned you the stories already. It's in the shared document, which literally says B4A Cinderella Stories Division. Look at the culture from the Cinderella story. So you get a Cinderella story with a description, a short description on where does the story come from. Look at the culture from the Cinderella story. So what can you tell me about economics and trade? What can you tell me about the family structures, class structures, religion, daily life, etc., etc., etc.? Because these are the things that are important. As I said just now, looking at the Cendrillon story, so the Caribbean story, class structure means, is there an upper class, a middle class, a lower class? And is that very important? I would argue in the Netherlands right now, there's not really a class structure that is imposed. If you are a lower class person, you're not forbidden to speak to higher class people per se. In certain cultures, though, that is absolutely forbidden. Family structure, family size. If you come from a culture where families tend to have 8 or 10 kids, the story about a stepsister becomes different when you come from a culture where the family structure is a maximum of 1 kid. And perhaps you can see how that differs, how that becomes a different kind of tension. So these are the basic elements that we want you to look at. So you have setting, you have to say something about the main character, the main helper. What's the problem actually? Where's the big gathering which leads to the love? What's the identifier? How does the lover know where who the mystery girl tends to be? Mystery girl is, and what's the prize she gets? So the oldest story that we know, the French one, is once upon a time in a dilapidated chateau in France. We have an old print, and there's a girl working there, and the girl's called Cinderella, and she is being abused by her evil stepmother and stepsisters. And then you have her main helper, the fairy godmother, who performs her magic, and then she's suddenly wearing beautiful clothes, and she can visit the ball. But the problem, logically, are these two, the evil stepmother and the evil stepsisters. Because then when they go to the ball, they're all there. And you cannot go, so you have to stay home. And then there's a big problem that needs to be overcome. So it's either cleaning the soot from a particularly difficult hearthstone. There's also hiding all kinds of seeds in a bag of soot, something like that. So they create a problem, and this is where everything stems from. Identify, you have to leave before before the clock strikes 12, and then she loses her glass slipper. And the prize is Prince Charming. That's a great prize, right? She can marry someone who's richer than she is now. Huzzah. So the main tone in the story tends to be happy, magical, and hopeful. Bright colors are everywhere. Everyone's trying to help her. Even when she's feeling very down, there are animals there to cheer her up, or there's a hope in her voice. The theme in the moral always, I tend to say always, the morale of the story is always good. There's good versus evil, and good will triumph. Kindness towards all matters. If you're kind to everyone, you will win in the end. The symbols are, of course, the transparent glass slipper. So something that shows it all, which I find very interesting, because she needs to hide herself to be seen. But in the end, the prince falls in love with who she really is, of course. She's cleaning the ashes, so there has been a fire somewhere. She had the fire of life, and then she had to clean it all up and stuff like that. And ashes blackened, so you hide yourself behind, you are quickly hidden behind the blackened remnants of midnight. You have to be home before midnight. Midnight, the witch's hour, the darkest hour. So be home before it's the darkest time. Pumpkin, nice little, I like this kind of symbol. The pumpkin is transformed into the transportation to the ball, so the big chariot. But the pumpkin has loads of seeds in it, so there's a kind of link to fertility and stuff like that. Please start to look at things like the colors, which colors are used. You have most of the clothes are blue and brown. Blue is a royal color in most of Western cultures. Originally, it was a pink dress. So the pink dress, really the girly, right? But it's a mixture of white and red. And this is the interesting thing. White is a color of innocence. Red is the color of blood. So when you have a white dress or a wedding dress, there's the weird, well, I say weird, the wrong, still wrongly attributed myth that a girl, when she has sex for the first time, she needs to bleed and then she's a woman and stuff like that. Yeah. Or you can look at that the other way. This is the discussion I had in 5AO as well. You can't be a woman until you've had your period, so that refers to that perhaps. It's all colors and fertility, growing up, it all hangs together. The diction, again, repetitive and simple, and the motifs are what we just told. So, you will all read Cinderella stories from different cultures and know about basic elements of folk tales, basic elements that we've just discussed. And what I want you to do is the 3 stories you receive, you're going to discuss them in a presentation. So record yourself. What are the similarities? What are the differences? How do they compare to the Cinderella story we know, the Cinderella story that we've grown up on? And more importantly, how have culture and context shaped the language, audience, and purpose? And how is language and image used to reflect identity? Okay, so I can see how these are fairly difficult questions. But really what it says here is, in the language used, for instance, by Cinderella, can you see where she comes from, what her status is? If you look at the audience, the story is always written to get the kids involved. Can you see that kids are being written towards or not? The purpose is the main story, is the main motif, the main lesson that we should learn from this fairy tale, be good to others? Or is it don't talk to strangers? Or is it make sure you remember where you buried your treasure? I don't know. Does that come from a culture? Does it come from a context? And it's pretty much the same here, language and image, identity. Cinderella is a story, always a story that has to do with someone not being able to show who they really are, or at least held back until they are seen for who they really are. Do they use the same kind of language for hiding? Is the same image used? Do they use different colors? Do they use different types of clothing? Perhaps she has a different job. All of these are possible. So try to see whether the culture and context that you can dive into after you've read the stories, whether or not that has a very big impact. And what's the differences then? What are the differences? Where do you see differences? So, how do they show the context, different identities, and convention of folktale? How do the stories share or not a central theme, and how does the theme connect with this cultural context or identity? So again, this is pretty much what I've been talking about just now. Try to analyze how are they teaching children a lesson? What is the lesson? What language is used? Which language is used? And are there specific themes, motifs, colors, and stuff like that? And how can you see that it is from a different culture or a different context than the one that we are used to? That's the main concept here. So what I want you to do when you present is approximately 5 to 7 minutes of English. It's not that much. Upload it to your OneNote. It's a class notebook in Teams, or if you'd like, you create a private link in YouTube that you send to me. You've got a week and a day. If I want to upload this just in a couple of minutes, please upload it before next Thursday night. It's not that much work. It's not a lot of reading, but try to see what you can gain from this. You've got a week's time. That I do think that should be enough. If, however, you come into trouble or there's problems anywhere because of the timing I'm giving you, let me know as soon as possible. I will see whether or not we can change something. We probably can. I want to show you what I mean with the OneNote, because I've been hiding that for a bit. Look, here you have the notebook. It's in Teams as well. I've just taken, I've downloaded the OneNote app, and you can do that as well. But all of you in the notebook in Teams have a page, and I've taken Kaylee's page now. I've made several tabs here. So this is something that you're going to take with you to next year. So that's a good thing, really. So here you can upload essays. You can look at global issues. These are things for 5 area. Don't worry too much. Here's where I can post the handouts, and you can post handouts if I send them to you. This is where you could put your homework, and I would argue homework was, for instance, the questions on fairy tales. This is literature. So if you have any literature notes, you can take them here. Notes overall, tests, and this is presentations. This is where I want you to upload your presentation. And this is really either record video, so you can do a live recording. You can also put in the video link, so the YouTube link. And what I've been doing is, it's an online video, so here you can embed it as well. Pictures, you can also, if you'd like, upload films. So these are things I've been doing. Yeah. So that's how this works. If you need any help with this, please let me know. I'll try my best to help you again. Okay. So, and that's the one I closed, of course, because that's always how it goes. So, this is what I'm going to make you do on Thursday, where we do a quick recap, lesson 2, 3, 4, and you watch my PowerPoint that I'm going to upload. And this is then the following table and the things that you can fill in. And so that's for the next couple of lessons. And the story divisions, I'll quickly go through them. I've put in the links. Oh. Oh, this is how I need to do that. Sorry. I thought I could share everything with you. Nice. I'm a bit slow. There we go. Hello. Sorry, my bad. I'm not going to edit it because I'm horrible with that. But this is a nice introduction, or sorry, nice pause kind of thingy, where you can see that even though I try to be very logical with my uploading, I'm still a bit of a moron. Sorry. So I've got a quiz here. Nice, click a quiz. Quick questions, easy peasy lemon squeezy. That's when then you watch the film that I'm going to embed, as I said, and this is the table that you can fill in with the information you find on your stories. And new share. These are the stories that I've given to you. So I've literally copy pasted links in that. So it's literally for you. Press, story, link, read, analyze. Yeah. So it should be doable. I think. I hope. God, I hope. Again, if it doesn't work, let me know. And there we go. So upload the private link, the analysis next week's Thursday evening/night at the latest. And after that, so that's for 2 weeks from now, that's for the week after that, I want you to write me a Cinderella story, something I can read to my kids. Yay. And I need it because I love my kids to bits. I love all of you to bits as well. But I've now spent a week and a half with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old who have the attention span of a recently born fawn, which means that after 2.5 seconds of doing something, they want to do something else. And it's driving me crazy. So anyways, this is what we're going to focus on in the weeks following. Don't worry too much. I'll bring it up again, but I just want to show you this is for the weeks after. So you could already kind of look at what would you add to a Cinderella story, which, for instance, you can do this, has you as the main character, or which is clearly something that has to do with your spoiled little sister or your spoiled little brothers. Yeah? So this is for later. This is for now. You compare and contrast 3 stories in a presentation, which you then upload. I hope that that is now clear. I hope I wasn't too enthusiastic or speaking too quickly, because I tend to do that anyways. My apologies for the mix-up with the wrong slides and stuff like that. However, everything is in here right now. I do think that I was complete in my information. Again, if you need a bit more information, let me know. I will try to do that ASAP. And one more time for the people in the back, this is your OneNote. Here are the presentations. This is where you can upload them now, if you'd like. Yeah. And for those of you who are opening it, then this is the in-house bibliothèque, and this is homework for fairy tales, and this is where I'll upload. So this was week 1. Hold on, I can do that actually. I'll upload week 1's stuff in a minute as well, and this is then everything for week 2. I'll make sure that all the handouts, all the files I've been sending you are put in here. And you can reach that really by opening the OneNote, opening the notebook in Teams. And if you open that one, you'll see, hopefully very quickly, that you've got your own notebook there as well with all kinds of tabs. And there's an in-house bibliothèque that I've shared with you. Okay, thank you very much. Good luck again. Good luck with everything. Stay safe. Please stay inside and try to avoid spitty people. Again, something that perhaps helps you that I'm not there. Let me know as soon as possible if something goes wrong, or if you're stuck, or if my English isn't clear enough. Thank you very much, and I'll hopefully see you this Thursday, where I'll invite you. I've invited you already to a discussion. The link is in the homework as well, and I'll re-invite you ASAP. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye-bye.